It's very disruptive to raise your children on a sinking ship.
Freedom of speech is something many North Americans and Europeans take for granted, but it's under threat. Big time. Nowhere is free speech in worse shape in a Western democracy than in Justin Trudeau's Canada. Recent warnings by Dr. Jordan Peterson and Tucker Carlson highlight the reality of censorship and force-fed political lies that Canadians are now facing. In this video, we're going to take a look at how freedom of speech is being eroded, even while Canada's economy continues to go through a slow-motion collapse and liberal politicians lie that everything is fine. First, let's start with Peterson's latest controversial and stark statements about just how bad a situation Canada is in. In a recent segment with the Toronto Sun, Peterson talked about Canada as a sinking ship where free speech and the economy are both headed to hell. It would be great if he was just exaggerating, but that's just not the case. In Canada, tweeting content that willfully promotes hatred can lead to a 2-year jail sentence. As for Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, let's get real. The last shreds of that document were trampled to death under police horses that violently broke up the peaceful trucker freedom convoy in Ottawa during COVID lockdowns and vaccine mandates.
Well, if you're a Canadian and you think the Charter of Rights protects your rights, you're a fool.
Peterson isn't just talking out of his behind. He faced the worst of the far-left censorship himself and knows how real it is, currently undergoing a witch hunt by the College of Psychologists of Ontario for writing controversial jokes in his tweets. In Canada, speaking your mind on gender, on politics, on anything controversial can now get you fired and called up before a Soviet-style kangaroo court. Peterson's attempt to find basic justice for his free speech rights hasn't succeeded. In fact, the Ontario Court of Appeals recently refused to hear his case, forcing him into a situation where his province's regulatory body for his profession will humiliate him publicly to take sensitivity training and more training on professionalism in public statements. Can you imagine a leftist or woke professor being asked to do this in Canada? It would never happen in a million years, and everybody knows it. The erosion of Canada's freedoms has already happened, according to Peterson, and citizens are just now clinging to whatever scraps they can still salvage.
Canadians do not understand this. Their freedoms are already gone.
According to the court, who said Peterson can face disciplinary forced training, his free speech rights haven't been infringed, and that this is a matter of his standing and remaining a psychologist in Ontario. He plans to broadcast the training for all to see, stating that this is just another example of the far-left ideology trickling down into institutions, professions, and pressure campaigns like the witch hunt currently going after him.
We're protected to some degree against tyranny at the highest levels of the political, but we're not protected at all against creeping tyranny in the administrative state.
Let's be honest, this is nothing but a form of re-education determined by the college. The complaints against Dr. Peterson originated from individuals scattered worldwide, including the United States, with no direct association or interaction with him as a psychologist. This was just a way to punish him for speech that certain people disliked or found offensive, including a joke Peterson made that offended an environmentalist on the Twitter platform now known as X. The assault against Peterson's basic rights also ties into related cases, such as the witch hunt of Amy Ham in British Columbia, a nurse who faced repercussions for asserting the biological differences between men and women. Another case involving a student in the Ottawa Valley emphasizes the challenges individuals face when expressing views contrary to prevailing ideologies that are backed by the Trudeau government. The right to express a point of view the government or other people may dislike is a fundamental right. It shouldn't lead to getting censored and forced into re-education by your professional licensing body. In his interview with the Toronto Sun, Peterson emphasizes the very important things about free speech. It's not just about the right to speak your mind, it's also about maintaining basic self-respect and hope. When you lose your courage and belief in saying what you believe, this can quickly lead to serious anxiety, losing hope, becoming weak, and aging prematurely. Peterson is warning all Canadians to be wary of the consequences of their silence, warning that if they remain passive, tyranny will increase much more in the coming years. As Canada slides into economic stagnation and more clamping down on free speech under the disguise of stopping hate, there's increasingly no worse place to be for free speech in the West than the Great White North. This is something that popular conservative commentator Tucker Carlson also echoed in recent remarks at a large speech in Calgary, Alberta. His speech came after posting a voicemail he left for Justin Trudeau promising to come and liberate Canada from the Liberals.
Yes, hi, I couldn't understand the French part, but it's Tucker Carlson calling from the United States. and I'd be grateful if you pass a message on to the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. We are coming to liberate Canada.
In his remarks speaking in front of around 10,000 people at the TELUS Convention Centre in Calgary, Carlson warned that Canada is on a downhill slide into tyranny under Justin Trudeau. His event, titled as part of the Sworn Enemy Tour, was not open to media, although it was attended by Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. The Canadian media, such as CTV, quickly sounded the alarm, claiming Carlson is an evil right-wing bigot who nobody should ever listen to, and chiding those who think he has some true things to say.
Tucker Carlson, who was fired by Fox News last year, is often accused of spreading dangerous rhetoric and misinformation.
In his remarks, only available in full on Carlson's website, the conservative free speech champion slammed Canada's open borders leader, gender ideology obsession, and transgender extremism, drug legalization policies, and the euthanasia program from the government. It's not a free country, it's a very scary place, and that's exactly what Canada has become under Justin Trudeau. Carlson made it clear right from the beginning, however, that he has a positive view of how remarkable Canada used to be and that Alberta is also a great province. He also made the surprising revelation that he's part Canadian by his family heritage, since his great-grandfather was from Nova Scotia. Carlson said that once you get past the urban and some of the grungier border areas, Canada is the prettiest country he's ever been in and is loaded full of resources and potential. Slamming the lunatics who run Canada, Carlson said its low population is actually a plus, and the morons in charge are sabotaging Canada's future. As Carlson noted, most funny comedians left Canada decades ago, stifled by the far-left ideology that's descended. If you have a country where the funny people feel like they have to leave, there's a huge problem, he noted. Laugh at enemies. Realize that not everything is a political debate and Canadians are being targeted for elimination. Notice the erosion of your most basic civil liberties, Carlson urged the crowd. If they're taking those rights away piecemeal and doing so in the name of public safety, even as they make the public sphere much more dangerous, which they have if you haven't noticed, and they're telling you that you can't defend yourself, and then they're telling you that they can't complain about it, and then they're subsidizing media to the point where all of your big media outlets, which are disgusting, are state media because they're taking state cash? Do you watch CBC? I do occasionally. I can tune in any hour of the day and I will learn that I am racist for driving an SUV and not being trans. They hate you. That's what they're saying. The conservative crowd ate up his every word, including supporters of the Freedom Convoy, Trump movement, and opponents of Canada's Liberal government. The event culminated with a panel discussion featuring Jordan Peterson and Conrad Black, as well as Carlson's discussion with Premier Smith, adding depth to the evening's remarks. Carlson's commitment to free speech is something nobody questions, even his enemies. He's never tried to get somebody fired for their speech or say that certain speech should be illegal. As Carlson has said, the second you decide to tell the truth, and I don't want to get supernatural, you are filled with this power from somewhere else. Try it. As Peterson also points out, Canada's economy is now on the same level as the poorest U.S. state of Mississippi, and it's only getting worse. A big part of the Freedom Convoy and the protest against COVID lockdowns were also to stop the Trudeau government from forcing the economy into disastrous inflation, which we're now experiencing. As more and more Canadians decide to leave the country and the overly depressed and sick take government-run euthanasia to end their life, there's never been a more important time to stand up for free speech. With both Peterson and Carlson raising the concerns about how bad things have gotten in Canada, it's worth doing a fact check. Where are we with free speech rights in Canada? Let's take a look at the opposing point of view to start. According to the left and columnists such as Bob Hepburn, free speech is doing just fine. In a recent column for the Toronto Star, Hepburn said Peterson wrongly believes in a God-given right to make harmful, hateful, incorrect, or dishonest statements without facing consequences. Hepburn said Peterson is simply facing the consequences of saying things which are untrue and hurtful. Hepburn also criticizes Peterson's interpretation of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, emphasizing that the Charter has limitations, especially concerning private entities like employers, unions, clubs, and professional associations. Peterson maintains that the Charter allows him to express whatever opinions he wishes. Hepburn dismisses Peterson's claim that his online comments were devoid of genuinely documentable harm, arguing that unrestrained freedom of expression can indeed cause harm. Hepburn highlights a perspective from a private online group discussion stating that attacks on woke individuals as promoted by Peterson often harm innocent bystanders seeking acceptance and fair treatment. In other words, Hepburn argues that hurting people's feelings means you can be muzzled by your workplace, and that's not a big deal for him. The truth about freedom of speech in Canada is that it's in very bad shape. There is no freedom of speech if you can't say what the government and professional institutions don't agree with. Soviet and tyrannical countries always start by censoring speech. It can reach the point where just telling the truth about a bad economic statistic will get you arrested, which is what Peterson is trying to warn everybody about. Unlike the US, Canadians can face legal consequences solely based on their speech. While Canada claims a supposed commitment to free speech, there are significant distinctions. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees freedom of expression, but a notable loophole is often overlooked. The Charter's preamble specifies that this freedom is subject to reasonable limits. Additionally, provincial governments in Canada can override freedoms after publicly declaring their intent, creating a divergence from the US, where the First Amendment prevails without such qualifiers. This has big legal repercussions in Canada for expressing certain views, especially views that are considered hateful, such as saying men and women are biologically different and that biological sex determines gender. The requirement for Peterson to undergo training and have his attitudes approved by the College for Psychologists highlights the risk of ongoing interference by the college based on its interpretation of correctness. Why do they get to decide what views and ways of expressing oneself are acceptable or not? The fact is that Canadians are being brainwashed by various institutions to conform to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, ideology, limiting public debate and forcing citizens into a far-left vice grip. Administrative law is making everything worse from the ground up, demanding that people only speak in a way the government and far-left academics find agreeable. That's not even close to a functioning democracy. Let's be honest, Canada is no longer a free country by any basic Western standards.
Canada is turning into a dictatorship.
It's crucial in any democracy and free country to be able to speak the truth, and that includes the highly disturbing truth about Canada's cratering economy.
And so, if you are wise and you have any sense and a certain degree of courage, then you say what you have to say and you let the devil take the hindmost.
At least there are still brave truth-tellers like Peterson and Carlson who are around to say what needs to be said. But in a country where sounding the alarm and speaking the truth is increasingly a crime, Canadians should not be surprised to hear more and more lies on their TV and see more and more censorship take over. It's time to wake up fast before government lies crowd out what's left of the truth. If you like this video and want to learn more about what's really going